The night my sister took credit for my promotion, the restaurant smelled like garlic butter and false pride. It was one of those family dinners my parents loved to organize whenever they wanted to showcase success. Dad picked the place. Mom insisted on the reservation. And my sister Laura arrived already glowing because she believed the spotlight was hers. I should have known something was coming the moment she hugged me a little too tightly and whispered, "Tonight's going to be fun." I smiled back, polite, guarded. 2 hours earlier, HR had called me into a small glass-walled office at work and told me I was being promoted to senior project lead. No warning. No build-up. Just recognition. It's my work. My late nights. My ideas. Mine. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not even my parents. I wanted to enjoy it quietly before it became a family debate about who deserved credit. Apparently, Laura had other plans. We sat down. Menus opened. Water glasses filled. And before appetizers even arrived, Mom clinked her glass. "We have something to celebrate," she said brightly. My stomach tightened. Laura beamed. "Oh, Mom," she laughed, waving her hand like she was being modest. "It's not that big of a deal." I froze. Dad leaned forward. "Tell us." Laura turned to me, eyes sparkling. "Well," she said, "Anna finally got that promotion I've been mentoring her toward." I told her exactly how to position herself with management. The words hit me like ice water. Mentoring. Positioning. As if she'd dragged me up a hill I hadn't climbed myself. My fork hovered midair. Mom gasped. "I knew it." Dad nodded approvingly. "See? Laura always looks out for her little sister." Little sister. I'm 32. I opened my mouth, then closed it. "Not yet," Laura continued, warming to her performance. "I kept telling Anna to speak up more, to stop being so quiet in meetings. Confidence is everything, you know?" She laughed lightly. Once she finally listened to me, things fell into place. I felt my face burn. 'Cause the truth was the exact opposite. Laura had never worked at my company. She had never seen my projects. She had never reviewed my presentations. The last advice she'd given me was to stop overworking and let things fail so people notice. I had ignored her completely. And now she was rewriting my career in front of our parents like it was a shared achievement. Dad raised his glass. "To Laura, then," he said. "For guiding Anna." Clink of glasses sounded louder than it should have. I looked down at my plate. I could feel the familiar pressure building, the old instinct to let it go, to avoid conflict, to swallow the lie for the sake of peace. That instinct had kept me quiet my entire childhood. Laura got praise. I got expectations. Laura got applause. I got "you should be grateful." But something was different this time. Because while Laura was busy narrating a fantasy, HR already had the receipts. And I knew exactly what my promotion was based on. The data, the reports, the emails, the late-night problem-solving calls. Not a single one had her name on it. I took a slow sip of water, steadying myself. Laura leaned back, satisfied. "Honestly," she added, "I'm just proud she finally listened to me." Mom smiled at her like she'd just won an award. "You're such a good sister." That's when my phone buzzed in my lap. A message from HR. "Congrats again, Anna. Leadership specifically cited your independent initiative and cross-team leadership." Independent. Initiative. Mine. I felt something click into place. I didn't need to fight at this table. I didn't need to raise my voice. Because the truth wasn't sitting in this restaurant. It was already documented. Already decided. Already mine. I set my phone down, folded my napkin carefully, and looked up at Laura with a calm I'd never felt before. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "that's not how it happened." Table went quiet. Laura's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" she asked lightly. I met her eyes. I mean, HR promoted me based on my own work. They specifically mentioned my independent leadership. Dad frowned. Anna, don't be ungrateful. I'm not, I said gently. I'm just being accurate. Laura laughed nervously. Oh, come on, you're being sensitive. Sensitive. There it was. The word she always used when the truth made her uncomfortable. I smiled, small, controlled. If you want, I added, I can forward the email. Silence dropped like a curtain. Laura's face shifted, confusion, then irritation, then something sharper. Mom cleared her throat. Well, she said, forcing a smile, either way, we're proud of you both. Both. Of course. I leaned back in my chair. The food arrived. Conversation limped on. But Laura didn't say another word about mentoring. And I knew this wasn't over. Because people who take credit don't like being exposed quietly. They wait. And they retaliate. What Laura didn't know yet was that HR wasn't just aware of my work. They were aware of something else too. Something she'd done months earlier. Something that made this dinner look like the calm before a very public storm. The rest of the dinner tasted like cardboard. Everyone pretended nothing had happened, but the air between Laura and me had changed temperature. She kept smiling, too widely, laughing a second too late at jokes, nodding while her eyes stayed fixed on me like she was replaying the moment I'd corrected her. I recognized that look. It was the same one she used growing up whenever I didn't play my assigned role. Quiet sister. The agreeable one. The one who let her shine. When dessert came, she leaned toward Mom and whispered something, loud enough for me to hear my name carried on the edge of it. Mom glanced at me, then away. Old habits. I paid my share, thanked Dad for dinner, and left early, citing a headache. In the car, my hands shook, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying something out loud. My phone buzzed before I even reached the freeway. Laura, that was unnecessary. You embarrassed me. I exhaled slowly. I corrected a lie. 3 dots appeared. Laura, you didn't need to do it in front of them. You didn't need to take credit in front of them. Silence. I put the phone face down and focused on the road. At home, I changed into sweatpants and opened my laptop. The HR email was still there, crisp and validating. I read it again, then again, like proof I hadn't imagined my own competence. Then another email caught my eye, older, flagged. Subject, compliance follow-up. My stomach tightened. Clicked. It was from 3 months earlier, sent to a small internal group I was part of because I'd led a cross-team audit. Laura's name appeared in the CC. That was strange. She didn't work in my department. I scrolled. The email referenced an external consultant who had submitted materials under a senior manager's credentials. Materials that matched a proposal Laura had bragged about at a family barbecue, one she claimed a friend in corporate had helped push through. At the time, I'd shrugged it off. Now, reading it again, the puzzle pieces shifted. I searched my inbox. Found more. A trail. Edits attributed to an account that wasn't hers, but the writing style was unmistakable. Phrases she always used. Formatting quirks. Even the same typo she'd made since college. My pulse quickened. I wasn't hunting for revenge. I was connecting dots. And HR, it turned out, had been doing the same. The next morning, I walked into work early. The glass walls reflected a version of me that looked calmer than I felt. At 9:07, my calendar pinged, meeting HR and compliance. I hadn't requested it. My throat went dry. In the conference room, 2 HR reps and a compliance officer waited. Friendly, neutral faces. Anna, one of them said, "Congratulations again on your promotion." "Thank you," I replied, steady. "We wanted to follow up on something unrelated," the compliance officer added. "You were part of the audit team last quarter." I nodded. "During that process," he continued, Did you notice any irregularities involving external submissions? The word irregularities landed heavy. I chose my words carefully. There were some documents that didn't align with the stated authorship, I said. I flagged what I could. The HR rep exchanged a glance with the compliance officer. We're asking, she said gently, because we've confirmed unauthorized use of credentials. We wanted to understand if there was any personal connection we should be aware of. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. The name you're investigating, Laura, she's my sister. Silence, brief but telling. Thank you for telling us, the compliance officer said. For clarity, your promotion decision was made independently of this investigation. I nodded. Relief washed through me, clean and undeniable. We'll handle the rest, the HR rep said. If anything changes, we'll let you know. When I left the room, my legs felt light, like I'd stepped off a cliff and discovered there was ground beneath me after all. By lunchtime, my phone buzzed again. Laura, we need to talk. Me at work. Laura, no. Privately. Me, then say it. Minutes passed. Laura, Char contacted me. There it was. My stomach flipped, but my hands stayed calm. Me about what? 3 dots. Disappeared. Reappeared. Laura, you know exactly about what. I stared at the message, the old urge to fix it tugging at me. To smooth it over. To take responsibility for her discomfort. I let the urge pass. Me, then talk to them. Her reply came fast, sharp. Laura, you set me up. I closed my eyes. The audacity was almost impressive. Me, I didn't create your actions. I didn't lie at dinner. I didn't submit anything under someone else's name. No response. I went back to my desk, finished my tasks, led my afternoon meeting with a clarity that surprised even me. When I got home that evening, another message waited. Laura, Mom is furious. She says you've always been jealous. I laughed, once out loud, alone in my kitchen. Jealous. The word they used when accountability arrived. I poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter, and finally replied. Me, I'm done shrinking so you can feel tall. The message stayed unread. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself any further. By Friday, the office felt different. Not hostile. Focused. Quiet in the way places get when something serious is unfolding behind closed doors. People still laughed at the coffee machine, still complained about deadlines, but there was an undercurrent, like everyone sensed a storm they weren't meant to see. I kept my head down, did my work, led my team, answered questions with the same calm tone I'd practiced for years. Inside, though, my thoughts kept circling one truth. This was no longer about my promotion. It was about integrity. Around noon, HR sent a company-wide reminder about compliance standards and ethical conduct. Generic language. Neutral tone. But I knew. Laura knew too. My phone buzzed nonstop. Mom called 3 times. I didn't answer. Dad left a voicemail. We need to clear the air, he said, voice tight. Your sister's very upset. Course she was. She'd built her identity on borrowed light. When someone turned it off, she didn't know how to stand on her own. That evening, I met my friend Maya for dinner. She watched me stir my food without eating and raised an eyebrow. Something's up. I told her everything, the dinner, the lie, HR, the messages. She listened without interrupting, then leaned back and said, So you finally stopped covering for her. The word covering landed heavy. Because that's what I'd done my whole life. Smoothed over her exaggerations. Let her reframe my achievements as group efforts. Took the smaller slice so she could feel bigger. How do you feel? Maya asked. I considered it. Scared, I admitted. But also lighter. She nodded. That's what boundaries feel like at first. When I got home, there was a knock at my door. I froze. Checked the peephole. Laura. jaw set, arms crossed. I didn't open it. She knocked again, harder. "Open the door," she snapped. "We're not doing this here," I said through the door, calm. "You already did," she shot back. "You humiliated me." I rested my forehead against the wood. "You humiliated yourself." Silence. Then her voice dropped, sharp and controlled. "You think you're better than me now because you got promoted?" I opened the door just enough to meet her eyes. "No," I said. "I think I'm done pretending you helped me earn it." Her face flushed. "I was trying to help you," she insisted. "You never ask for help. You always act like you don't need anyone." There it was, the familiar accusation dressed up as concern. "I didn't ask because your help always came with strings," I replied. "Credit. Control. A rewrite." She scoffed. "You're imagining things." "HR didn't imagine them," I said quietly. Her expression flickered. Fear, then anger. "You could have warned me," she hissed. "You could have protected me." The words stunned me. Protected her from the consequences of her own actions. I straightened. "I'm not your shield anymore." Her voice rose. "After everything I've done for you?" I shook my head. "Name one thing you did without taking something in return." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Her eyes darted away. "This family always sides with you," she muttered. I almost laughed. "No," I said softly. "They side with whoever keeps the peace." And I finally stopped doing that. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not as her shadow. Not as her backup. As a person who wouldn't bend. "Mom says you're tearing the family apart," she said. I met her gaze. "The truth doesn't tear families apart," I replied. "Lies do." I just stopped carrying them. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she laughed, brittle. "You think this ends well for you?" "I think it ends honestly," I said. She shook her head, backing away. "You've changed." I nodded once. "Yes." She left without another word. I locked the door, slid down against it, and exhaled. Not in relief. In resolve. The next Monday morning, HR requested my presence again. This time, the meeting was brief. "The investigation concluded," the compliance officer said. "Unauthorized credential use was confirmed." I kept my face neutral. "Appropriate action has been taken," the HR rep added. They didn't say Laura's name. They didn't need to. "Your cooperation was appreciated," she finished. "And again, congratulations on the promotion." I walked out of the room with my shoulders back. By lunchtime, my phone lit up with messages. Cousin. An aunt. Even Dad. Word travels fast when a golden narrative cracks. I didn't respond. I didn't need to defend myself. The story was already written, in emails and logs and facts. That evening, Mom finally got through. I answered. "How could you do this to your sister?" she demanded. I held the phone away from my ear until her voice dropped. "I didn't do anything to her," I said evenly. "She did this to herself." "You could have handled it privately," Mom snapped. "I did," I replied. "At dinner." When I corrected her. Silence. Then colder. "You've always been competitive." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "I've always been competent," I said. "You just preferred when I stayed quiet." She hung up. I set the phone down, sat at my kitchen table, and finally allowed myself to feel it all. Not guilt, not shame, but pride. Not the loud kind. The grounded kind. The kind that comes from standing in your own truth and not apologizing for it. The week after HR closed the investigation, my promotion became official. New title. New responsibilities. Same desk, same view, but everything felt different, like I'd crossed an invisible border. People treated me with a subtle shift in tone. Not awe. Respect. Kind you earn quietly without theatrics. Laura stopped coming by unannounced. She stopped texting altogether. But silence from someone like her isn't peace, it's preparation. I knew something was coming. It arrived in the form of a Sunday family lunch invitation. Mom's house. Noon. We need to talk this out as a family, Dad wrote. I stared at the message for a long time. Old me would have gone immediately, heart pounding, rehearsing apologies I didn't know. New me asked one question before replying. Do I actually want to be there? The answer surprised me. Yes. Not to fix anything. To stop being edited. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. When I walked in, Laura was already seated, posture rigid, lips pressed thin. Mom hovered near the kitchen island, stirring something aggressively. Dad looked relieved to see me, like my presence alone might stabilize the situation. We sat. Plates clinked. Small talk limped along until Mom finally slammed her fork down. I don't understand how we got here, she said. This family used to support each other. Laura snorted. Support, she echoed. Funny word. Kept my voice level. What do you want to talk about? Mom turned to me sharply. Your behavior. Your attitude. You've changed. Yes, I said simply. Laura scoffed. You think you're untouchable now. I met her eyes. I think I'm accountable. There's a difference. Dad rubbed his temples. HR didn't have to take it that far, he muttered. They didn't, I replied. They followed policy. Laura slammed her palm on the table. You could have stopped it. The room went still. I leaned back in my chair. By lying. Her mouth opened. Closed. By protecting family, she snapped. Family doesn't steal credit, I said calmly. Mom's face hardened. You're enjoying this, she accused. I shook my head. I'm exhausted by it. Laura's voice rose. You always play innocent. Always hide behind facts and emails. You know how to make people look bad. I tilted my head. I didn't make anything look bad. I stopped covering. Silence. Dad looked between us. Laura, he said carefully, did you submit those documents? Her jaw clenched. I was helping, she insisted. I expedited things. Everyone does it. Not here, I said. Not legally. Mom shot me a glare. Stop talking like HR. I smiled faintly. Stop asking me to talk like a scapegoat. That word landed heavy. Scapegoat. Laura laughed bitterly. You're rewriting history. No, I replied. I'm finally reading it clearly. I took a breath. This didn't start at that dinner. That dinner just made it public. Mom crossed her arms. So what, you're the victim now? I shook my head. No. I'm the witness. Laura stood abruptly. I'm done listening to this, she said. Enjoy your promotion. See how long it lasts when people realize who you really are. I stood too slow steady. They already do. She froze. Dad looked up. Mom's eyes flicked between us. What does that mean? Laura demanded. I met her gaze. It means my work stands on its own. Always has. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dad sighed. We just want things to go back to normal. I looked at him, really looked. Normal was me staying quiet so she could feel important, I said gently. I'm not doing that anymore. Mom's voice softened dangerously. So what happens now? I picked up my bag. Now I go live my life without being edited at your table. Laura scoffed. Running away. I paused at the door. Walking forward. Inside, the air felt lighter. Not because things were resolved, but because I had stopped negotiating my truth for their comfort. The fallout didn't come all at once. Came in ripples, subtle shifts, muted reactions, the kind of consequences that don't announce themselves but slowly redraw the map of your life. At work, my calendar filled faster than ever. People looped me in earlier. Decisions came to my desk instead of around it. I wasn't just promoted in title, I was promoted in trust. That mattered more. Meanwhile, Laura's world was shrinking. I heard it through family channels first. An aunt mentioned she'd been between contracts. A cousin said she was reconsidering her direction. The polite euphemisms people use when the truth is uncomfortable. I didn't ask questions. I didn't gloat. I focused on building what was in front of me. One afternoon, my manager stopped by my desk. "Leadership's impressed," he said. "You handled that cross-team mess with real professionalism." I nodded, thanked him, and felt a quiet satisfaction settle in. Not victory over Laura, vindication of myself. That night, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't saved but knew by heart. Mom. I let it ring twice before answering. "We need to talk," she said, no greeting. "About what?" I asked. A pause. "About your sister." "Of course." "I'm listening," I said. She exhaled sharply. "She's struggling. People are treating her differently." I leaned against the counter, steady. "Actions do that." Mom bristled. "You could help smooth things over." There it was, the old job offer. Peacekeeper. Buffer. Shield. I closed my eyes briefly. "I won't lie," I said. "And I won't intervene." "So you're just going to let her fall?" Mom snapped. I opened my eyes. "I'm going to let her be accountable." Silence stretched. Then, softer, almost pleading, "This family is fracturing." I chose my words carefully. "It fractured when the truth became inconvenient," I replied. "Not when it was spoken." She hung up without another word. Days later, Laura showed up at my apartment again. This time, she looked tired. Less polished. Confidence she wore like armor had cracks. I didn't invite her in. We stood in the hallway. "I lost a contract," she said flatly. I waited. "They said my references weren't strong enough," she added. I nodded once. "I need you to talk to HR," she said, eyes sharp. "Tell them you exaggerated." I stared at her. "Exaggerated what?" "The compliance stuff," she snapped. "You know it wasn't that serious." My voice stayed calm. "It was serious enough to be confirmed." She scoffed. "You're enjoying this." I shook my head. "I'm done managing your outcomes." Her voice dropped, urgent. "You owe me." The words landed, familiar and wrong. "For what?" I asked. She hesitated. For being your sister." I met her gaze. "Being my sister doesn't mean rewriting my reality to protect yours." Her jaw clenched. "You always think you're right." I stepped back slightly. "I think I'm honest." She laughed bitterly. "You've changed." I nodded. "Yes." She searched my face like she was looking for the version of me that would cave. She didn't find her. "Fine," she snapped. "Enjoy being alone." I watched her walk away, shoulders stiff, and felt a pang, not guilt, not triumph, but mourning. For the sister I thought I had. For the version of me who kept hoping. Inside, my apartment was quiet. Peaceful. I made tea, sat on the couch, and let the feelings pass through without attaching to them. This wasn't revenge. It was consequence. A week later, Dad called. His voice sounded older. "Your mother's taking this hard," he said. I breathed out slowly. "I know. She feels like she's losing both of you." I stared out the window. She never learned how to hold us at the same time. He was quiet. "Is there any way back?" he asked. I answered honestly. "Not without accountability." He sighed. "That may be a long road." "Then it's theirs to walk," I said gently. When we hung up, I realized something else had shifted. I no longer felt responsible for the emotional weather in other people's lives. That burden had fallen off my shoulders without ceremony. And the space it left behind, wide, quiet mine, was where something new could finally grow. By the time autumn settled in, the narrative around me had fully shifted. Not loudly, not publicly, but decisively. At work, I was no longer promising. I was dependable. My opinions were sought out in meetings where I used to just take notes. When I spoke, people paused, listened, took action. The promotion hadn't changed who I was. It had revealed what had always been there once the noise stopped. Aside of work, my world grew quieter. Fewer calls, fewer forced lunches, fewer obligations disguised as love. First, the silence felt strange, like a room after the music cuts out. Then it felt like relief. One evening, while sorting emails, I noticed a calendar invite forwarded from HR, Leadership Recognition Quarterly Review. My name sat at the top of the agenda. I closed my laptop and laughed softly to myself. Not because I needed more validation, but because I'd finally learned how to receive it without flinching. That same night, Dad showed up at my door. Alone. He looked smaller somehow. Not weaker, just unguarded. I let him in. We sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from 2 mugs of tea. He didn't speak at first. He just looked around, taking in my space. "You built something solid here," he said finally. I nodded. "I had to." He cleared his throat. "Your mother's struggling," he said carefully. I met his eyes. "Is she struggling because I told the truth?" I asked, "or because it disrupted a story she liked better?" He looked down. "Both." We sat in that for a moment. Then he said, "Laura's angry. Not at you. At herself. She won't admit it, but things didn't turn out the way she thought they would." I didn't respond. He continued, "She thought confidence was enough. That presentation mattered more than preparation." I leaned back. "Confidence without competence is loud," I said. "Competence doesn't need a microphone." He smiled faintly. "You always had a way with words." I shrugged. "I just stopped hiding them." He took a breath. "Your mother wants you to come to Thanksgiving." There it was. The test. I didn't answer immediately. I pictured the table, the glances, careful avoidance, pressure to perform normalcy. "Only if I'm not expected to pretend," I said. Dad nodded slowly. "I'll tell her." He stood to leave, then paused. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. The words landed differently this time. Not as a hook, as a gift. When he left, I sat alone in the quiet and let myself feel it. Not the ache, not the resentment, but the grounded satisfaction of being seen without having to disappear first. A week later, Laura emailed me. Not a text. An email. Subject, "We should talk." I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just want to understand how everything fell apart so fast." I read it twice. Then a third time. The defensiveness was gone. So was the accusation. In its place was something raw, uncertain. I replied simply, "Understanding requires honesty." "I'm open to that. But not blame." She responded an hour later, agreed. We met at a neutral cafe. No family. No audience. She looked different. Less polished. More real. She didn't smile when she sat down. "I thought if I looked confident enough," she said, staring into her coffee, "no one would question me." I listened. I thought helping you look good would make me look good, she continued. I didn't realize I was erasing you. The words hung between us. I needed you to say that, I replied. She nodded. I know. She swallowed. I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't complete. But it was the first time she'd apologized without asking me to minimize myself in return. We didn't hug. We didn't reconcile. But something shifted. Accountability had finally entered the room. When I left the cafe, the sky was overcast, the air crisp. I walked home slowly, breathing deeply. This wasn't about winning. It was about alignment. About living in a way where my work, my voice, and my boundaries told the same story. And for the first time, they did. Thanksgiving came quietly. No grand announcements. No forced cheer. I arrived with a bottle of wine and a clear understanding of my limits. Mom greeted me at the door, polite but guarded, like someone handling fragile glass. Laura was already there, sitting at the table, posture careful, eyes meeting mine briefly before looking away. We were learning a new choreography, one without lies. Dinner passed without incident. Small talk. Neutral topics. Weather. Work. When Dad asked about my team, I answered simply. When Mom asked if I was happy, I said yes and meant it. Halfway through dessert, Laura cleared her throat. I owe Anna something, she said. The room went still. She looked at me. I took credit for something that wasn't mine. I told myself it was helping. It wasn't. It was ego. Mom stiffened. Dad watched closely. Laura continued, voice steady. HR didn't misunderstand. They caught something real. I'm dealing with that. She turned to me. I'm sorry. Not performative. Not loud. Just true. I nodded once. Thank you, I said. The words felt right. Mom exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. We all want this family to move forward, she said. I set my fork down. Moving forward doesn't mean pretending nothing happened, I replied gently. It means not repeating it. She looked at me, then nodded. I can try, she said. Try was new. After dinner, as coats were gathered and goodbyes exchanged, Laura lingered. I don't expect us to be close, she said quietly. But I don't want to be dishonest anymore. I met her eyes. That's enough for now. On the drive home, the city lights blurred past my windshield. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned. At work, the quarterly review went better than I'd imagined. Leadership praised my clarity, my consistency, my refusal to take shortcuts. A director pulled me aside afterward. We're building something long-term, she said. We need people like you. I smiled, thanked her, and felt the quiet certainty settle in my bones. Weeks later, I found the email Laura had sent months ago, the one where she'd suggested reframing my work to sound collaborative. I deleted it without ceremony. I didn't need reminders anymore. One evening, Maya came over with takeout. We sat on the floor, laughing about nothing important. You know, she said between bites, you didn't win by exposing her. I tilted my head. No, you won by not disappearing. I let that sink in. She was right. The real shift wasn't HR. It wasn't the dinner. It was the moment I stopped negotiating my worth. When I stopped letting other people narrate my story. I slept better. I spoke up sooner. I trusted my instincts again. The world didn't punish me for it. It met me where I stood. And somewhere in that steadiness, I realized the fear that used to run my life had quietly packed its bags and left. The funny thing about truth is that it doesn't shout when it wins. It settles. Quietly. Permanently. In the weeks after Thanksgiving, life didn't suddenly become perfect. It became honest. And that was better. At work, my days were full in a way that felt earned. I mentored juniors without hovering. I made decisions without second-guessing myself. I learned when to listen and when to lead. And when people praised my work, I didn't deflect anymore. I said thank you. At home, my evenings were calm. No crisis calls. No emotional cleanups. No rewriting other people's mistakes into palatable stories. Just space. And in that space, I realized how much energy I used to spend managing everyone else's comfort. I didn't miss it. Laura kept her distance, but it was a respectful distance now. When we spoke, it was direct. Fewer words. More meaning. She stopped posturing. I stopped bracing. We weren't close, but we were real. And that was enough. Mom tried in her own imperfect way. She stopped interrupting when I spoke. She asked questions instead of making declarations. Sometimes she slipped. Old habits die hard. But I no longer corrected her with anger. I corrected her with absence. Boundaries did the work I used to do myself. One afternoon, months later, I found myself back at that same restaurant, the one where Laura had taken credit at dinner. This time, I was there with my team, celebrating a successful launch. No speeches. No grandstanding. Just laughter and shared accomplishment. When the server brought dessert, my phone buzzed with a message from HR. Excellent leadership today. Exactly the culture we're building. I smiled, set the phone down, and joined the conversation. No one needed to announce my success. It was visible. On the drive home, I thought about that night, the lie, the correction, the quiet exposure. I thought about how afraid I'd been to speak. Afraid of being labeled difficult, sensitive, ungrateful. I'd learned something since then. Silence doesn't keep the peace, just delays the truth. And the truth eventually collects interest. When I got home, I poured a glass of water, stood by the window, and watched the city settle into night. I didn't feel the need to call anyone. I didn't feel the urge to explain. I felt complete. My promotion wasn't just a title. It was a turning point. The moment I stopped letting someone else wear my work like a costume. The moment I trusted that facts don't need volume. They need consistency. My sister took credit for my promotion at dinner. Char knew a different story. And so did I. In the end, that was enough. Because I didn't need the room to clap. I needed the truth to stand. And it did.